Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Today we're going to take a look at the new Lionel 3-rail O-scale Burlington Northern Hustle Muscle Heritage Set. So fasten your seatbelts for a trip around the racetrack. So I have the box open now, and as you can see, it's got a very good look to it. Very good cascade green and white, indicative of Burlington Northern, as well as the pictures of the set on the actual box, as we've come to love and know from Lionel. So right now I'm going to take the actual set out of the box. So now the part that we've all been waiting for. Here's the Lionel Burlington Northern Hustle Muscle set out of the box and on the track. Lionel offered this set in the 2021 Volume 2 catalog, and it began arriving at dealers in the early fall of 2022, and I have to say my first impressions of this set are very good. So in order to give this set the recognition it deserves, I'll focus on the locomotive and the rolling stock equally, because the set tells a story about the Burlington Northern and its storied heritage. The first piece of the set I will start off with is the centerpiece, the SD45 locomotive and its history, number 6430, Hustle Muscle. Now before I went to the actual history of the Hustle Muscle SD45, I wanted to first talk about the overall history of the SD45 locomotive and some related railroad history as well. The SD45 locomotive was a 6-axle diesel-electric locomotive built by EMD in their LaGrange, Illinois plant between 1965 and 1971. Featured an EMD 645 E3 20-cylinder engine generating 3,600 horsepower, which made it a very popular choice for the railroads, and were able to achieve over 82,000 pounds of continuous tractive effort and 92,000 starting tractive effort through EMD's model D77 traction motors. This, combined with EMD's favorable reputation of diesel locomotive manufacturing throughout the first half of the 20th century, was another reason it was made popular with railroads. Unfortunately, the strength and power of this locomotive was arguably its biggest flaw, as the 20-cylinder engine was prone to induce crankshaft failure and lead to catastrophic engine failures. Because of this, EMD sought to remedy the situation by replacing the engine block with a new design, but for some railroads it was too little too late, as some shied away from the locomotive after these issues were discovered and opted for the more reliable SD40 platform of locomotive. Despite setbacks, the SD45's power was undeniable, and some railroads were keen on keeping their fleet of SD45s, and many survive today due to the longevity of the upgrades made and conversions to more reliable hardware like that of the SD40-2. During their build run, EMD manufactured 1,260 of these engines, and they were found on many different railroads, and others came into possession of them through mergers and acquisitions of railroads over the years as well. One of these mergers took place in 1970 with the Great Northern Railway, which merged with the Northern Pacific, Spokane, Portland, and Seattle, and Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, and ultimately formed the Burlington Northern Railway, that same motive. These mergers into BN are important not only to help tell the story of this set, but also this locomotive, because the Burlington Northern SD45 6430 Hustle Muscle, as we see here, is based off of a prototype, and that exact engine started out life with the Great Northern Railway, and its road number was 400. Great Northern 400 was the very first production model of the SD45 to roll off the EMD assembly line. Great Northern 400 was delivered in May of 1966 and was given the name Hustle Muscle by the Great Northern Railway as a mark of pride to emphasize the power of the locomotive being so hefty at the 3,600 horsepower mark. And it was in 1970, during that great merger I mentioned, this locomotive became Burlington Northern 6430. 3 years later, in 1973, 6430 underwent repairs at Burlington Northern's Livingston, Montana shop and was repainted in Cascade Green. At the request of numerous railfans and employees, 6430 retained its Hustle Muscle nickname. 6430 was retired from service on the BN in 1986. It was in 1989, 6430 was repainted to its original Great Northern 400 paint scheme and then stored at the Lake Superior Railroad Museum in Duluth, Minnesota. It is kept in operating condition and is a true testament to the folks and the organizations who keep this engine running. Despite mechanical setbacks these engines are known for, and has seen occasional use on excursions, conventions, special events, and still calls the Lake Superior Railroad Museum home. Now, I will go into Lionel's newest rendition of the Hustle Muscle. This is the first time Lionel has offered the Hustle Muscle SD45 in the Burlington Northern Cascade Green, but it has offered the Hustle Muscle in Great Northern 400 in the past. But this is the first time offered with the latest version of Legacy and Rail Sounds features to include more realistic crew talk sounds and the options of having 5 different whistle and bell sounds, and even offers a corresponding super bass unit. Now let's take a more close-up look at the locomotive. Taking a look at this locomotive as indicated by the letter F, we can see that it has separately applied multiple unit hoses or MU hoses, a plow, electro coupler in front, a drop plate here, as well as safety chain, as well as grab irons and hand railings. And I don't know if you guys can see, but the deck walkways here look to be diamond plate pattern, so that is always a nice touch. Still at the front of the locomotive, we have each level of stairs going up to the cab separately painted. We also have the trucks right here, and this whole truck assembly is kinematic, and so when you go around your larger curves, the pilot stays fixed or semi-fixed, but when you're going around tighter curves, it swivels and allows you to negotiate those tighter curves. Next, we have a legible builder's plate here, Burlington Northern logo here, windows and cab figurines, and these windows are fixed, molded in, as well as we have the sunshade here, a radio antenna up here, beacon light here, and then the double pile headlights right there. Taking a look at the front cab view, we have 4 windows, each with their own separately applied windshield wiper, as well as we have a beacon light on top and a radio antenna. And as you can see, the number boards are illuminated, and we have double pile headlights right here. Now I know what you're thinking. This font of numbers on the number board don't quite look like the font of a Burlington Northern locomotive. I, for one, thought this was a mistake on Lionel's part, but it turns out that this is actually prototypical. When the Great Northern merged with the Burlington Northern and this locomotive was repainted and renumbered, the numbers actually are the same font and look very similar to the Union Pacific Gothic font that we all know and love from Union Pacific models of all years. So I thought that was a really nice touch. Moving on to the middle section of the side of the locomotive, we can see air tanks are here, as well as one on the other side, as well as the fuel tank. Now I don't know if you guys can tell, but there's hardly any room in between the rails and the fuel tank, which I thought was a really nice touch, being prototypical. Next we have the air intake here, as well as the blower duct. Now the blower duct was used for blowing coal air to the traction motors. See the exhaust vent here, as well as the first of 5 roof fans. Now the first 2 roof fans here were used for the dynamic brake grid section, while the rear 3 fans were used for drawing air through the engine radiators to cool the engine. The hot air is then vented through the fans upward. Now to coincide with the rear 3 fans, there were radiator vents which are used for drawing in or sucking in cool air to eliminate heat from the engine bay located within the interior of the main car body. Then we finally have a horn. So underneath the 3 fans is the control panel, which we can see here. As we can see here, the rear of the locomotive is very similar to the front in that it has grab irons as well as a drop plate, coupler cup bar, electrocoupler, and a walkway plate. So next in the set we have the Northern Pacific trailer-on flat car. Now the trailer itself is what you've come to expect from Lionel and their 50-foot trailers, in that it has simulated wood, it has the couplers with the hidden latch, This one has die-cast trucks with the rotating bearing caps. Taking a look at the fire truck itself, we can see that it has a nice black and red sort of powder-coated finish. You can see that it's company number 2. It's got hose detail in the back here, collapsible hoses, as well as the rigid hoses here. It's got a spool hose here, and it has the gauge and pump detail right here. Now I will say this fire truck is modeled not after any particular fire truck, but it resembles that very similar of a Mack B series made from 1955 to 1963. Not very many Mack B series were made, but again, this fire truck that Lionel has come out resembles it, but is not marking or indicating that it is indeed a Mack truck. Now I will say, Lionel, in releasing this fire truck, it looks very similar to a Corgi modeled Mack B series truck that I had growing up. At any rate, it's not branded as any particular manufacturer. Rather, it just simply says Lionel Corporation made in China on the bottom. You can see here. Now, I will say the fire truck is very good, very durable, and looks good on the 50-foot flatbed car that is released with this set. Okay, so I have the fire truck back on the flat car, and as you can see, it's held in by these chocks like it would a normal tractor trailer. And in addition, the fire truck comes with these separately applied lights that go in the back part here. There's 2 slots that this light post goes in. Next piece of rolling stock we have in this set is the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy cylindrical covered hopper. Now this hopper is very detailed. As you can see, there's separately applied grading detail, as well as the walkways here. In addition, it has separately applied ladders, the handbrake, some safety chain to go with said handbrake, couplers with the hidden latches, as well as trucks with rotating bearing caps. Getting a better top view of this cylindrical hopper, you can see these opening, these latches, and they do in fact open up. How neat is that? You know, talking about the structural aspect of this cylindrical hopper, I do have to say that all the numbers, all the labels are very well done, and everything is legible. Next piece of rolling stock in this set is the St. Louis and San Francisco or Frisco 50-foot modern boxcar. Now this boxcar is quite nice in the sense that it's pretty simple. You know, there's not very many separately applied details, but this is nonetheless a great piece. So you can see here, the lettering and the numbers are all legible. It has a separately applied handbrake wheel here, as well as roller bearing trucks yet again. You know, some Lionel doors are hard to open, but this one actually just opens pretty much with my thumb really easily. And now for the last, but certainly not least, piece of rolling stock in this set. This is a Spokane, Portland, and Seattle extended vision caboose with the cupola cam. Now these cabooses have a lot of separately applied details, so let's start at the end here. Looking at the end of the locomotive, these locomotive ends are identical to each other in that they both have a end of train red light, separately applied handrails that lead into a ladder, as well as handrails on both sides of the end of the caboose, as well as a safety chain here and handbrake wheels. Looking on the top of the caboose, we have grading on both sides indicating a walkway. We have a radio antenna here, as well as the smokestack over here. One cool aspect about these cabooses that Lionel puts out is that they are fitted with capacitors for the lighting, and that enables you to take the caboose and not be subject to any flickering that the lights would otherwise have without the capacitors in. And of course, just like the rest of the rolling stock, these are all roller bearing trucks on this caboose. Okay, so that wraps it up for the down and dirty up close and personal review of this locomotive, but before we took it out for a spin, I wanted to talk about our first place feature. Now, while the locomotive is really well detailed and the rolling stock is very good, I wanted to take this time to talk about how I've chosen the historical significance as our first place feature. I feel like this set tells a story. As well as being a great set to look at and a great set to run on the layout, it tells a story about Burlington Northern and its heritage. And it does a very good job in doing so with all of the rolling stock options, as well as Lionel going with the Burlington Northern scheme that was also a Great Northern locomotive itself. Okay, so to start this setup, I'm going to use Lionel's extended startup sequence on the Legacy remote.
This is the dispatcher. Start up and hold. Over. Okay, let's get to work. Out.
Alright, first we'll check out the first of 5 horns. Then horn number 2. Horn number 3. Horn 4. Then finally horn 5. Horn 1 is my personal favorite, so luckily that's the default one. Next, let's take a listen to the bell. Here's bell number 2. Bell number 3. Bell number 4. Bell number 5. So being a newer Legacy engine, this locomotive has the ability to give more realistic crew talk sounds. Here's a listen. Okay, so now we take a listen to the more realistic crew talk sounds, so let's take the engine for a spin.
Dispatcher, we're ready. Is it okay to pull? Over. Okay, stand by. Out. Dispatcher, am I cleared to the outbound? Over. You're good outbound. Dispatcher out.
Okay, so that about wraps it up for this set. Now the retail price of this set is right at $1099.99. And if you go through a good Lionel dealer, you might be able to get a little bit of a discount on the set if they're still available. Now I hope you enjoyed the review of this set that I did. If you like what you see, please crash into that subscribe and that like button for more. Until next time, I'm Joe from the Racetrack Route, and I'll see you at the Winner's Circle.